Hey there, fellow gardeners, and welcome back to Smart Garden. I'm so glad you're here today because we need to have an urgent conversation, one that could literally save your garden's life. Before you reach for that watering can or fire up the tiller, I need you to stop and take a deep breath. What I'm about to share with you might shock you, maybe even upset you a little, but I promise it will transform the way you think about gardening forever. Imagine for a moment two gardens side by side. One bursts with vibrant, disease-resistant plants that seem to thrive with minimal effort. The other struggles constantly. Yellowing leaves, stunted growth, endless pest problems despite your best efforts. What's the difference? It's not what you see above ground. It's the invisible universe thriving, or dying, beneath your feet. Your soil isn't just dirt. It's a living, breathing ecosystem teeming with billions of microorganisms working tirelessly to feed your plants, cycle nutrients, and create the foundation for everything that grows. But here's the heartbreaking truth. The very things we've been told would help our gardens might actually be systematically destroying this precious underground world. Today, we're exposing 5 everyday practices that are silently killing your soil. And more importantly, I'll show you exactly how to reverse the damage and build a garden that thrives for generations to come. Let's talk about something sitting in probably half of your garden sheds right now. Synthetic fertilizers. These bags promise lush green growth and abundant harvests, and initially, they deliver. But here's what the manufacturers don't tell you. You're essentially feeding your plants fast food while starving the living ecosystem that should be nourishing them naturally. When you apply synthetic fertilizers, you're dumping a concentrated blast of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium directly to your plants. Sounds great, right? Wrong. This nutrient overload actually suppresses the function of nitrogen-fixing bacteria, the microorganisms that naturally convert atmospheric nitrogen into plant-available forms. It's like replacing a master chef with a vending machine. Your plants get fed, but the sophisticated network of microbial workers becomes redundant and begins to die off. The consequences ripple outward in devastating ways. As these beneficial microbes decline, so does your soil's organic matter, the dark, crumbly humus that gives healthy soil its structure and water-holding capacity. The soil becomes acidic over time, creating an increasingly hostile environment for the remaining beneficial organisms. Meanwhile, the excess nutrients you're applying don't just stay in your garden. Rain washes them into waterways, triggering explosive algae blooms that suffocate aquatic life and create dead zones. Your garden isn't isolated, it's part of a larger ecosystem, and synthetic fertilizers poison it slowly but surely. The worst part? Once you start this cycle, your soil becomes dependent on these chemical inputs because you've destroyed its natural ability to feed itself. You've created an addiction that gets more expensive and less effective every season. Alright, so let's talk about those bottles of pesticides and herbicides you might have lined up in your storage area. I mean, when you spot a pest munching on your prized tomatoes or see weeds creeping into your flower beds, the temptation to spray is, well, pretty overwhelming, right? But here's the thing. These chemicals, they don't have eyes. They can't tell the difference between the aphid you want to eliminate and the beneficial bacteria that's helping your plants absorb nutrients. They're like broad-spectrum destroyers, and unfortunately, your soil's microbiome becomes collateral damage in the process. Let's take glyphosate, for instance, one of the most common herbicides in the world. Research has shown that it doesn't just kill weeds, it disrupts the crucial symbiotic relationship between plant roots and mycorrhizal fungi. You see, these fungi are like the underground highway system of your garden. They extend your plant's root networks by up to 700 times, accessing nutrients your plants could never reach on their own. When you spray glyphosate, you're essentially bulldozing this highway system. The impact, it extends to nitrogen fixation, nutrient cycling, and the decomposition of organic matter. All those invisible processes that transform dead leaves and kitchen scraps into plant food. And many pesticides contain persistent organic pollutants that just don't break down easily. They accumulate in your soil year after year, creating a toxic legacy that continues harming soil life, long after you've forgotten about that one afternoon you sprayed for caterpillars. Your soil, it has a memory and chemical treatments. Well, they leave permanent scars. There's something, I don't know, deeply satisfying about turning over fresh soil, watching the earth break apart into fine particles. Our agricultural tradition has taught us that tilled soil is prepared soil. But every time you run that tiller through your garden, you're detonating a biological bomb underground. Soil isn't just loose particles. It's an intricate architecture of aggregates held together by fungal networks, sticky microbial secretions, and plant roots. These aggregates, they create channels for air and water movement, while protecting organic matter from rapid decomposition. But when you till, you obliterate this structure instantly. The fungal networks that take years to establish are shredded in seconds. Earthworms, those tireless tillers who work for free and actually improve your soil while they dig, are sliced apart. The deeper soil layers, which should remain dark and rich with stored carbon, get exposed to oxygen and sunlight. This triggers a massive microbial feeding frenzy that burns through your soil's organic matter reserves, releasing clouds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Your soil literally deflates, becoming denser and less hospitable with each pass of the tiller. Without its structural integrity, your garden becomes vulnerable to erosion. The precious topsoil, built up over decades or even centuries, washes away with the first heavy rain or blows away in strong winds. You're mining your soil's fertility, spending down an inheritance that can't be replaced in your lifetime. The tragic irony? You're working harder while making your garden's foundation weaker with every season. This one surprises most gardeners because water seems so innocent. But if you're watering with municipal tap water, you're likely applying chlorine directly to your soil with every watering session. Cities add chlorine to kill harmful bacteria in drinking water. It's an essential public health measure. But remember, chlorine is a disinfectant, and it doesn't distinguish between harmful bacteria in water pipes and beneficial bacteria in your soil. When you water with chlorinated water, especially frequently or in large volumes, you're essentially sterilizing the very ecosystem you need to cultivate. The top few inches of healthy soil typically contain enough organic matter and microbial activity to neutralize small amounts of chlorine before it penetrates deeper. But repeated applications overwhelm this protective buffer. Microbial populations crash, nutrient cycling slows down, and your plants begin showing mysterious deficiencies even when nutrients are present in the soil. They're there, but without the microbial workforce to process them into plant-available forms, they might as well not exist. This is particularly devastating if you're trying to establish new plantings or restore degraded soil, precisely when you need that microbial community to be most active and robust. Finally, let's talk about something happening every time you walk through your garden beds or park equipment on your lawn: soil compaction. It seems harmless, but you're crushing the life out of your soil with every footstep. Healthy soil is like a sponge, full of tiny air pockets and channels created by roots, worms, and microbial activity. These spaces allow oxygen to reach deep into the soil while letting water drain properly and giving roots room to explore. When soil gets compacted from foot traffic, heavy machinery, or even just the pounding of heavy rain on bare soil, these spaces collapse. The soil becomes dense and oxygen depleted. This creates an anaerobic environment where beneficial aerobic microorganisms, the ones that power most of the critical nutrient cycling in your garden, suffocate and die. In their place, anaerobic bacteria take over, producing toxic compounds that harm plant roots and create that distinctive sour smell of oxygen-starved soil. Plant roots can't penetrate the hardened soil, limiting their access to water and nutrients. Earthworms can't tunnel through, so they abandon the area or die trying. Water runs off the surface instead of soaking in, carrying away topsoil and creating erosion channels. Over time, compacted soil loses its biological diversity, becoming dominated by hardy but less beneficial organisms. Your garden's productivity plummets, and no amount of fertilizer or watering can compensate for the loss of a functioning soil ecosystem. Now that you understand these 5 silent saboteurs — synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides, overtilling chlorinated water, and soil compaction, let's talk about healing. The beautiful truth about soil is that it wants to come back to life. Given the right conditions, that underground ecosystem can rebuild itself into something even more resilient than before. Start by switching from synthetic fertilizers to compost and organic amendments. Feed the soil, not just the plants. Layer on compost-aged manure or leaf mold to provide both nutrients and food for rebuilding microbial populations. If you're dealing with pest or weed issues, explore integrated pest management approaches that work with nature rather than against it. Encourage beneficial insects, practice crop rotation, use physical barriers, and choose resistant plant varieties. When you absolutely must intervene, opt for targeted organic solutions that break down quickly rather than persistent chemicals. Trade your tiller for a broad fork, or simply stop tilling altogether. Embrace no-till gardening by using mulch to suppress weeds and adding organic matter to the surface, letting earthworms and microbes incorporate it naturally. This mimics how forests build soil, from the top down, not bottom up. For watering, let chlorinated tap water sit in buckets or rain barrels for 24 hours before using it, allowing the chlorine to dissipate. Better yet, collect rainwater, which is not only chlorine-free but also contains dissolved nitrogen that plants love. Finally, address compaction by establishing permanent pathways in your garden and never walking on growing beds. Use mulch or stepping stones on paths to distribute your weight. If you're dealing with severely compacted soil, gently work in compost and consider growing cover crops with deep taproots like daikon radishes that act as natural soil breakers. Picture your garden a year from now. Plants that resist disease naturally, soil that's soft and fragrant, earthworms everywhere you look, and growth that happens almost effortlessly because you're finally working with nature instead of against it. This isn't a fantasy. This is what happens when you stop killing your soil and start feeding it. Your garden becomes a self-sustaining ecosystem that gets better every year, rather than requiring more inputs to produce the same results. You'll save money, save time, and grow more nutritious food or more beautiful flowers because your plants are getting everything they need from a living, thriving soil food web. If this information has opened your eyes to what's really happening beneath your garden, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss our upcoming videos on regenerative gardening techniques. Share this with your gardening friends, your neighbors, anyone who cares about growing healthy plants sustainably. Together, we can transform not just our own gardens, but our entire community's approach to working with soil. Drop a comment below telling me which of these soil killers surprised you most, and let's start a conversation about building truly sustainable gardens. Until next time, keep growing, keep learning, and remember, the most important crop you'll ever grow is the soil itself.